The jungle was silent, except for the chirping of strange insect-like creatures. Jace walked carefully through the thick trees, his boots sinking into soft, mossy ground. He had been on many alien worlds before, but this one felt different. The air was heavy and warm, and the plants around him glowed slightly under the twin suns. His guide, the alien girl named Zira, moved ahead without saying much. She always walked in silence, her dark purple skin almost blending with the trees. Jace didn't understand her fully, but he knew she wasn't dangerous. In fact, she had saved his life when a wild beast attacked 2 days ago. Now he owed her. And he was curious about her people as they reached a small clearing. Zira suddenly stopped and looked around nervously. Then she whispered, "Wait here," and walked behind a thick bush. Jace frowned and tilted his head. "What's wrong?" he called, but Zira didn't answer. She just disappeared behind the bush. Moments passed, and Jace heard a soft sound. It wasn't like any animal or machine he had heard before. It was like a chime, almost musical, but low and wet. He stepped forward carefully, his curiosity growing. The sound stopped, and Zira came back out. Avoiding his eyes, her face looked redder than usual, as if she was embarrassed. "Let's go," she said, quickly, turning away from the bush. But something on the ground caught Jace's attention, right where she had been crouching. Something was sparkling in the dirt. He stepped closer, confused. He expected to see waste, or maybe drop supplies, but instead he saw jewels, not just one, but 3 glowing stones. About the size of marbles, they shimmered with colors he had never seen before: blue, green, and gold all at once. Each jewel looked like it had been shaped perfectly, smooth and warm with faint inner light. Jace bent down to pick one up. "Don't touch it," Zira said sharply, reaching out to stop him, but he had already touched it. The jewel was warm, not cold like a normal stone, and for a second, Jace felt something strange. A small wave of emotion passed through him, like sadness and fear mixed together. He pulled his hand back, blinking. "What is this?" Zira looked around, making sure they were still alone. Then she whispered, "They came from me." Jace stared at her, confused. "You mean you made them?" She nodded slowly, clearly uncomfortable. "It's something my body does," she said. "Only some of my kind can do this." Jace took a step back, trying to understand. "You poop jewels," he said, not meaning to sound rude. Zira flinched, but nodded again. "It is not funny, human," she said quietly. "It is why we are hunted." Suddenly, Jace wasn't laughing. He looked at the jewels again and realized the truth. If word got out about this, people would chase her, cage her, even hurt her just to get these stones. He had seen what humans could do for less. "How long have you been hiding?" he asked, his voice low. "Since I was a child," she replied. "We escaped from the jewel farms, deep underground." Jace's eyes widened. "Jewel farms? They feed us chemicals, force us to produce more and more," she said, her voice shaking. "My mother died that way." A chill ran down Jace's back. He had been sent to explore this moon, to map its rivers and mountains. But now, he had found something no map could show: a living secret. Zira stepped forward and held out her hand. "We have to bury these," she said, "before someone smells them." Jace raised an eyebrow. "Smells them?" "Yes," she said. "Hunters, both alien and human, use special tech to track jewel scent." That's when Jace heard a faint beep. Kay turned and looked up into the sky. Far above, something moved through the clouds, silent, dark, and flying low. A drone, scanning the area. Zira saw it too, her eyes wide with fear. "They're here," she whispered. "They know I'm not alone anymore." Jace's heart pounded as he grabbed the shovel from his pack and began to cover the jewels with dirt. Zira helped, her hands moving fast. They didn't speak, but the silence said everything. Their peaceful walk had just turned into a race for survival, and Jace knew this girl, who quietly glowed and produced jewels, was more valuable and more in danger than anyone had guessed. As the drone passed overhead and vanished into the mist, Zero looked at Jace and said, "If you stay with me, your life will change forever." He looked at the spot where the jewels were now buried, then back at her serious face, and he replied, "Then I guess I'm ready." The night fell faster on this alien moon than it did on Earth. The twin suns dipped behind the mountains, and the glowing plants dimmed into soft blue. Zira and Jace moved carefully through the thick forest, their footsteps silent on the soft ground. The air grew colder, and the wind whispered through the leaves in a language only nature understood. Zira didn't speak much, but her pace had changed. She kept looking over her shoulder, her long ears twitching slightly. Jace felt it too, that feeling in the spine that says someone's watching. He didn't know how they found them so quickly, but after that drone appeared above the trees, everything had changed. He had questions, 1,000 of them. But now wasn't the time. His pulse quickened when he heard a faint rustling in the canopy. He froze, grabbing Zara's arm. She nodded, already sensing it. They ducked behind a thick root system of a giant tree, holding their breath. A red light moved silently through the branches. A spherical scanner, no bigger than a football, hovered just above them. Its surface rippled like liquid metal as it scanned the ground below. Zira's skin turned slightly darker, blending into the shadows. Jace stayed completely still, his hand tightening around the old alien blaster he'd salvaged from a wreck. The scanner paused, flickered twice, then moved away, vanishing into the dark. Zero sighed softly, her breath shaky. "They're not just here for me," she whispered. "What do you mean?" Jace asked, still scanning the treetops. "They smell you too," she said. "They know you touched the jewel." Jace looked down at his palm, remembering the wave of emotion that passed through him earlier. "They can track that?" he asked. Zero nodded. "The jewels are not just crystals. They're alive in a way. They carry pieces of us." The thought sent a shiver through him. He had touched something living, something sacred, and now it marked him. "How long before they catch up?" he asked. "Not long," she answered. "They'll send ground teams, traps, everything. They won't stop until they get what they want." Jace took a deep breath and looked into her eyes. "Then we won't give it to them." They continued deeper into the forest, where the trees turned glassy and strange. Jace had never seen plants like these, some shaped like spirals, others like large transparent flowers. The ground here pulsed faintly under their feet, like something alive slept beneath the soil. Zira led the way with careful steps, never disturbing the vines or glowing moss. She had grown up in places like this, always running, always hiding. Jace followed her, not as a leader, but as someone learning to survive in her world. After an hour of walking, they reached a large rock formation that formed a natural cave. Inside, it was cold and dry, safe from scanners and air-based sensors. Zero lit a small orb that hovered in the air, casting soft white light around them. Jace sat down on a rock and finally asked the question burning inside him, "Why did your people even evolve like this?" Zira sat across from him, her eyes tired but focused. "We don't know," she said. "Some believe we were created by the ancients. Others say it was a curse. But whatever the truth is, the universe didn't care." She pulled out a small cloth from her bag, unfolding it to reveal several more jewels, each one different in shape and glow. "These are my memories," she said softly. Jace leaned in, his eyes wide. "Memories?" "Yes," she replied. "Every time we release one, it holds part of our thoughts, our emotions, our experiences." She handed him a small one, blue and dim. "Touch it." Jace hesitated, then placed a finger on the jewel in an instant. His mind was flooded with flashes. A child, hiding behind rocks, hearing screams, the burning heat of a laser beam. A mother's voice calling her name. It was Zira's childhood, her escape, her fear. He pulled back. His breath caught in his throat. "That's what they're stealing," she said. "Not just gems, but our past." The silence between them grew heavy, filled with unspoken thoughts. Jace finally spoke. "We have to stop them." Zira looked at him with surprise. No human ever said that before. "Well," he said with a half-smile, "I'm not every human." But just as the moment grew still, a loud crack echoed outside the cave. Zira's ears twitched, and she stood up quickly. Grabbing her weapon, "They're here," she whispered, eyes wide. Jace jumped to his feet, already moving toward the cave mouth. But as he looked out into the glowing jungle, what he saw made his blood run cold. Not one, not two, but 5 tall figures moved toward the cave, each one covered in armor, with glowing visors and heavy boots, and behind them, floating just above the ground, a massive containment pod. It was empty but ready. Jace knew what it meant. They hadn't come to talk, they came to take, and this time they weren't leaving without her. Asterisk, asterisk. Asterisk, asterisk. The first shot tore through the cave wall, sending chunks of stone flying. Jace grabbed Zira's hand and pulled her behind a thick slab of rock just before another blast shook the ground. The hunters hadn't waited. They had started the attack without warning. Zira clutched her pouch tightly, the sound of the jewels inside barely audible over the chaos. Jace peeked from behind the stone, spotting the armored figures as they advanced with slow, heavy steps. Their weapons weren't designed to kill. Not yet. They wanted her alive. The glowing lines on their suits pulsed with power, casting eerie shadows across the entrance. Zira whispered something in her native language, then turned to Jace. "They won't stop until they have me, and if they can't, they'll take someone else, like me." Jace looked at the jewel in her pouch, remembering the vision it gave him. He wasn't just protecting her body, he was guarding memories, souls, truth. They couldn't fight them head-on, not in this open. Cave Jace scanned the walls, then spotted a thin crack in the rear. It was barely big enough for one person. "We go that way," he said, pointing. Zira hesitated. "It leads into the echo chambers, the caves where sound bends." "We have no choice," he said. "Go now." As she slipped into the narrow space, Jace covered her, firing bursts from the alien weapon. One of the armored hunters stumbled as Jace's shot hit a weak point in its leg armor. But they kept coming, unfazed. Once Zira vanished into the gap, Jace followed, twisting his shoulders to squeeze through. Inside, the world changed. The walls shimmered slightly, and every sound echoed and looped. His own breath came back to him as whispers. Zira moved quickly, her body light and agile as she guided him deeper into the tunnels. "This place hides us," she said. "It confuses machines, but you must be careful." As they ran, a strange glow began to rise from the floor, veins of crystal threading through the cave stone. The deeper they went, the brighter the path became. Suddenly, a deep hum filled the air. Zira stopped and knelt, touching the glowing crystal with both hands. Jace paused, watching her. "They're waking," she whispered. "Who?" Jace asked, confused. "Our ancestors," she said. "What the hunters call the jewel cores, but to us, they are voices frozen in time." Jace stepped forward as the crystals around them pulsed in rhythm with Zira's breathing. The tunnel lit up, revealing walls covered in ancient carvings, symbols glowing faintly. Then, without warning, one of the symbols detached from the wall and hovered in the air. It hovered toward Zira, then melted into her skin like light sinking into water. Her eyes widened as she gasped, and the ground beneath them vibrated. What just happened? Jace asked, reaching out to her. They accepted me, she said in awe. They know we're running for more than just my life. Before Jace could respond, a low growl echoed behind them. One of the hunters had found the crack and was now inside the tunnel. Its body barely fit, but it forced its way through, scraping against the stone walls. Jace raised the weapon again, but Zero grabbed his wrist. Wait, she said, let the cave speak. The crystals around them flared, and a high-pitched tone filled the air. The hunter screamed as its visor cracked, and it staggered backward, clutching its head. Then the walls around it shifted, slowly closing in like jaws. In seconds, the cave swallowed the intruder, sealing itself as if it had never been there. Jace stood frozen, stunned. The cave. It protected us, he whispered. Zero nodded slowly. It remembers pain. They continued deeper, the sounds of pursuit fading behind them. But their path was no longer just escape, had become a mission. Zero looked over her shoulder and said quietly, they think we're treasure, but we are history. Jace touched the small jewel in his pocket, the one he had taken by accident. It pulsed slightly, warm and alive. He understood now why they must not fall into the wrong hands. Somewhere above them, more ships would be coming. Hunters, smugglers, scientists all chasing the glitter, but none of them understood what those jewels truly were, and now one human did. He was no longer just protecting Zero, he was protecting the legacy of a forgotten people. Even if it meant becoming the hunted himself. The cave opened into a valley unlike anything Jace had ever seen. Massive trees with crystal branches reached toward the sky, their leaves humming quietly in the wind. The ground was covered in moss that glowed faintly with every step. The air shimmered like mist made of light. Zero called it the Forest of Echoes, a sacred place where memory and matter blended together, a place her kind used to visit before they were hunted. Jace stepped carefully, watching how his own reflection blinked back at him from the shining tree trunks. They weren't just walking through a forest, they were walking through thought. Is this real? Huh, he asked. Zero didn't answer right away. She turned to him and whispered, this is where they tried to erase us. Jace frowned. Erase you? She nodded slowly. The first time we were captured, the scientists brought us here. They planted devices into the trees to harvest our memories. She pointed at a broken metal post hidden under moss. That was one of them. Jace bent down to look closer. It still had symbols scratched into it. Human military script. Property of Sector 9 research. Suddenly, a soft voice called from the trees. Zira, it said, echoing gently. Jace turned sharply, raising his weapon. But Zira didn't move. She froze in place, her body trembling slightly. The voice called again, this time weaker. Zira, is that you? Zero stepped forward slowly, her hands shaking. Jace followed her gaze and saw something ahead us, small figure lying beneath the roots of a twisted tree. As they approached, Jace saw the truth. It was another alien girl, even younger than Zira. Her skin pale and her body thin. She was curled into herself, her arms wrapped tight. Her eyes fluttered open, and when she saw Zira, she began to cry. Lena, Zira gasped, falling to her knees beside her. My sister, Jace backed away a little, giving them space. Zero cradled her sister, who looked barely alive. She had markings on her arms, burns, bruises and scars from shackles. Zero whispered gently, singing something soft in her language. Jace looked around, realizing this wasn't a forest, it was a graveyard of memories. Scattered among the trees were item shoes, broken datapads, tools, all rusting and half-buried. Things left behind by those who were taken. Lena tried to speak, but coughed instead. Zira placed a tiny green fruit between her lips, and Lena slowly chewed. She was taken years ago. Zero whispered to Jace, her voice shaking. I thought. She was dead. She's not, Jace said firmly. And we'll keep her safe. But the moment was short. A sudden rumble shook the trees. The glowing leaves began to flicker, and the humming grew louder. Zira stood, pulling Lena up with her. They found this place again, she said. Jace looked to the sky. One of the trees bent slightly, revealing a dark ship above. It was different from the others, sleeker, with black armor and blinking red lights. A large circular hatch opened on its underside, and drones began pouring out. They weren't scanning now. They were armed. Dozens of them flew straight toward the forest, cutting down branches and burning. Everything in their path we run, Jace shouted, grabbing Lena's other arm. But the forest had other ideas. The glowing moss under their feet began to move, shifting like liquid. Roots rose from the ground and twisted together, forming a barrier behind them. The forest is closing, Zira said. It's trying to protect us. As they ran, trees behind them fell in slow motion, as if the forest was giving them a path. But the drones were fast, and one of them caught up. It fired a net toward Zira, but Jace jumped in front, letting it wrap around him. Zira screamed his name, but the net sparked and sent shocks through his body. He dropped to the ground, twitching, smoke rising from his armor. Lena screamed and reached out. But Zira pulled her away, tears in her eyes. We have to go, she said. He wouldn't want us to stop. Just before they vanished into the thick, glowing roots, Lena turned back one last time. Jace's body was still, covered in the net. But a flicker of light from his hand told her something. He was still holding one of the jewels, and it was glowing brighter than ever. Jace opened his eyes to darkness, but it wasn't cold or empty. It was warm, like floating inside a deep ocean made of memories. He couldn't feel his body, but he could feel something else, something inside his hand, a steady pulse, gentle, but alive. The jewel in this strange space. Colors swirled slowly around him. Blues and purples mixed with faint gold threads. He heard whispers, soft voices, calling not his name, but feelings, fear, pain, hope. They weren't just sounds, they were people. Trapped inside memories, trapped inside the jewels. Jace floated closer to one of the glowing orbs. It shimmered, and the moment he touched it, a story rushed into him. A young girl hiding beneath a table, her mother covering her mouth, loud boots outside. A door kicked in, the mother screaming, a hand reaching down, pulling the girl by her hair, and then blackness. Jace let go, his heart pounding. Another orb hovered nearby. Softer in color, he reached out again, and this time he saw something different. Zira, as a child, laughing, running through a field of glowing grass with Lena, her father lifting her up, spinning her in the air, a perfect moment, and then a flash of light. Soldiers in armor, shouting, that moment, frozen in the jewel forever. Jace realized what these were. They weren't just jewels. They were souls, carved by experience, emotion, and memory, to Zira's people. They were sacred. To others, they were just currency. He floated there, overwhelmed, when a new presence appeared, a figure formed from the light, tall and gentle, with eyes like starlight. It didn't speak, but Jace understood. The voice wasn't sound, it was feeling. You have seen, you have held our pain. You have chosen. Jace's thoughts became words in this space. I didn't mean to. I just wanted to help her. The figure nodded slowly. Then help us all. You carry a key. Let it awaken. Suddenly, a surge of energy burst from the jewel in his hand. The darkness cracked like glass, and light poured in from every side. He gasped. As his body returned to him, he could feel the floor, the weight of the net, the cold jungle air. But something was different. The jewel had melted into his skin. A glowing mark now pulsed on his palm. Above him, the drone hovered still, confused. By the energy spike, it aimed its weapon. But Jace moved before it could react, faster than before. Stronger than he remembered, he leaped up, grabbed a sharp stone, and smashed the drone's lens in a single swing. Sparks burst, and it dropped to the ground. Lifeless Jace stood, breathing, hard looking around the shattered trees and glowing forest. He wasn't the same. The jewel hadn't just shown him memories, it had changed him. Up ahead, he heard Zira's voice calling faintly. She had kept running, believing he was gone. He followed the glowing path, and the forest seemed to shift for him. Opening trails where there were none, the mark on his palm lit the way, as if the ancient souls were guiding him. He found her near a fallen crystal tree. Cradling Lena, her eyes widened when she saw him. You're alive." Jace nodded slowly. "No," he said, "I'm awake." Zira stood, stepping closer. She saw the mark on his palm and gasped. "It chose you," she whispered. "No human has ever." Jace took her hand gently. "I saw what they did too." "You," he said, "and I felt it. We're going to stop them." But before they could speak more, the ground trembled again. Not just from ships, but something deeper, older. The echo crystals were reacting to the bond. And now, every hunter on the moon would feel that pulse. They wouldn't just come for Zira anymore. They'd come for him too, but Jace didn't care. He wasn't running now. He had seen what these people were worth, and he would fight for them, even if the galaxy burned for it. The sky above the jungle cracked with thunder. Even though no storm had formed, it wasn't rain coming, it was war. Ships appeared through the clouds like shadows, tearing the air black and silver, marked with the logo of a private extraction company. A name Jace recognized, Vorex Corp. He had worked for them once, years ago, back when he was just a survey scout, back before he cared about anything but credits. He never asked what they did with the samples he collected. Now he knew. Zira and Lena stood close beside him as the ships landed far ahead in the valley. Heavy doors opened and soldiers marched out in rows, their suits bulky and glowing. Red, but they weren't alone. A smaller ship landed last, smoother, more elegant. The ramp opened slowly, and a man stepped out. Jace felt the blood drain from his face. It was Commander Tarek, his old unit leader. The same man who gave him his first bonus for finding rare life. The same man who told him, "Don't ask questions, just scan and report." Tarek walked with confidence, holding a datapad in one hand and a strange rifle in the other. He looked older now, but his smile was still sharp and cold. "Jace Relin," he called out through the amplified speakers. What a surprise! Zira stiffened, and Jace stepped forward. "I'm not with you anymore, Tarek," he said loudly. "I figured," Tarek said, chuckling, "especially after that jewel pulse." "You touched one, didn't you?" Jace didn't answer, but the mark on his palm glowed softly. Tarek smiled wider. "Well then," he said, "that makes you valuable. You're coming with me." Jace shook his head. "You're not touching her," he said, nodding toward Zero or her people. Tarek sighed, pretending to be disappointed. "I was hoping we could talk like old friends. But if not," he raised his hand, and the soldiers aimed their weapons. "Then I'll collect you the hard way." Before Jace could react, something clicked behind him. A sharp pain lit up his side as a small bolt of energy hit his ribs. He turned, shocked, and saw one of the scouts holding a compact stunner. But it wasn't a soldier. It was someone he trusted, Rian, a human he had met a year ago during an off-world resupply mission. A man who claimed to have left the corporate life behind. Jace had shared meals with him, traded stories, even saved his life once. Now, Rian stood beside the enemy, weapon shaking slightly. "I didn't want to do this, Jace," he said quietly. "But they offered me freedom." Jace collapsed to one knee, pain blinding his thoughts. Zira screamed and ran to him. Holding him up, Lena hid behind a rock, clutching her own small jewel to her chest. Tarek stepped closer, inspecting the glowing mark on Jace's palm. "Beautiful," he whispered. "It's finally bonded. Do you even understand what it means?" Zira shouted, her eyes glowing with emotion. Tarek smirked. "I understand its value." He reached out toward Jace's hand, but before he could touch it, a shockwave burst from Jace's chest. The air rippled like a sonic blast, throwing Tarek backward. The nearest soldiers flew into the trees, groaning. Jace stood again, the pain fading, replaced by something stronger. The jewel inside him wasn't just glowing now, was alive. His veins shimmered faintly under his skin. His eyes flickered like crystal fire. He looked at Rian, who had dropped his weapon in fear. "You had a choice," Jace said, voice calm and low. "You chose the wrong side." Zero touched his arm. Her expression mixed with awe and worry. "What is happening to you?" She whispered. "I don't know," Jace replied. "But I think the jewels are fighting back, through me." Behind them, the jungle began to shift. Trees moved, vines twisted, roots erupted from the ground like living snakes. The forest had awakened, and it was angry. Tarek stood again, brushing off dust. He looked at the rising storm of nature and fire, and for the first time, he didn't smile. "Fall back." He yelled to his troops, "Regroup at the secondary site." But it was too late. The ground split beneath one of the gunships, swallowing it whole. Crystal pillars shot up, pinning drones mid-air. The forest had remembered, and this time, it wasn't forgiving. Jace turned to Zira and Lena. "We have to finish this," he said. "No more hiding. No more running." Zira nodded, her eyes full of tears and fire. "Then we go to the heart," she said, "the place where it all began." They walked in silence, deeper than deep, past shattered roots, broken machines, and places where light refused to touch. Zira led the way, her fingers tracing old symbols carved into the walls. Lena followed close, her tiny hand wrapped tightly around Jace's fingers, and Jace. He didn't feel like just a human anymore. The jewel mark on his palm glowed steadily, no longer pulsing in fear. It was guiding them, drawing them toward something older than all of them combined. They reached the bottom of a long, spiraling cavern. At the center stood a tree unlike any other. Its trunk was made of crystal, wide as a tower, glowing from within. The roots stretched into the stone like veins, humming softly with sound. This was the heart. The place where the first of Zira's kind had been born. The place where memory was not just held, but made. Zira stepped forward and knelt at the base of the tree, placing her hand against the crystal. The glow responded immediately, a warm wave of color moving upward. "I brought someone," she whispered. "Someone who remembers us without needing to be one of us." Jace stepped closer, unsure. The tree pulsed when he came near, and his palm began to burn, not in pain, but in awakening. He placed his hand on the crystal, and instantly, his mind was filled with light. Images rushed through him, thousands, maybe millions, faces of the past, voices long silenced, laughter, screams, songs, birth, betrayal, love, and death. He saw every life that jewels had captured and every life erased by those who wanted to turn beauty into profit. And then, the tree asked him a question, not in words, but in meaning. "Will you be the keeper?" He didn't speak, but something inside him answered, yes. The crystal mark on his palm vanished, and instead, the glow spread through his entire body. His skin shimmered with light like Zira's, and the memories settled inside him, not to control, but to protect. When he opened his eyes, the heart tree shined brighter than the twin suns above, and above ground, the jungle responded. All across the moon, the trees lit up, the vines moved with purpose, and the sky shimmered with a new frequency. Ships that hovered above the forest suddenly lost power, crashing harmlessly into soft roots, Drones stopped mid-flight, confused, and fell like stones. Varric's corpse control had been broken. The planet had chosen someone else now. Tarek and his remaining soldiers were surrounded by the living jungle. But it wasn't Jace who ordered their retreat, it was the forest itself. It simply moved them away, slowly. Like a parent removing foolish children from danger. And when? They were gone. The air was still again, not silent but safe. Zira stood beside Jace, looking at him with wonder and something else, peace. No one's ever been chosen. She said softly, not even from my kind. Jace looked at the heart tree, then at her. I think the tree didn't choose a race, he said. It chose someone who finally listened. Lena stepped closer and touched the trunk gently. The light danced under her fingers, and she smiled for the first time in days. This place feels like home, she whispered. Zira hugged her sister, tears falling down her cheeks without shame. For the first time, she said, it is. In the weeks that followed, the world began to heal. The memories hidden in the jewels were stored safely in the heart. Zira's people came out of hiding, slowly, carefully, and Jace. He stayed, not as a hero, not as a leader, but as a guardian, the keeper of memories. The first human ever to be trusted with the soul of a forgotten people, and every night, as the stars watched from above, the forest would sing, not of war or greed, but of one strange human who didn't run when he saw what others pooped. He stayed and he listened.